In the Ielts test, you hear some recordings and you have to answer questions on them. You have time to read the instructions and questions and check your work. All recordings are played only once. You will hear a conversation between a man and a woman as the man joins a local library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, I'm new in the area and I'd like to join the library, please.
That's no problem. Let me get an application form. Here we are. Now, all we have to do is fill this in and then I'll get you to sign it and you'll be a member.
Great.
Now then, what's your full name?
Peter Adrian Camden.
How do you spell Camden?
C-A-M-D-E-N.
C-A-M-D-E-N?
Yes, that's right.
Right. And what's your address?
Flat 5, 53 Green Street, Finsbury.
OK, got that. That's near here, isn't it?
Yes, just 5 minutes walk.
What's the postcode?
7434.
Got that now. Now, can you tell me your date of birth?
8th of July 1976.
And what's your telephone number?
Well, I don't have a home number, but I've got a mobile.
That'll do fine.
It's 06634 982 746. Did you get that?
Some of it. Can you say it again?
The code's 06634 and the number's then 982 746.
Right. That's almost it. Now I need some kind of identification to prove where you live. Do you have a driving licence or a passport or anything like that?
I'm afraid that everything I have has got my old address on it. Do you need it now?
No, not now, but you won't be able to take anything out until we see that.
Wait a minute. I've got a letter addressed to me here that arrived this morning. Will that do?
Oh yes, that's a good idea. That will be fine. Let's look. OK, well that's finished.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Could I ask you a few questions? The council that runs the library is running a survey to find out what kind of books people prefer so that they can direct their buying.
Yeah, no problem.
OK, so what type of books do you like?
Well, I'm very keen on mysteries. You know, when a detective is trying to find out who did the murder. Historical novels interest me too. Romance, never. My sister loves them, but they bore me to tears. I quite like books on animals too. I get them out sometimes. Not science fiction either. Too weird.
Well, I think that's it then.
Good. Oh, do you charge anything?
The library is free unless you want to rent out some of our videos or DVDs.
And how much is that?
Well, we rent videos out for $4 each and DVDs are $6. You must leave us a deposit of $60 as well. That's returnable, of course.
I don't think I'll get any of those just yet. Can I pay later?
Sure, just give the money in when you're ready to rent them out.
Well, thanks very much. You've been very helpful. I might take a book out now for the weekend, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, goodbye.
You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
You will hear a man talking about areas for growing vegetables in towns called allotments.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
I'm delighted to see so many of you. I was going to start by saying that more and more people are seeing the value of growing their own fruit and vegetables, but now I don't need to. First of all, let me say that whether you have a garden or not, there are all sorts of benefits to having a plot of land you can call your own, and it will give you a great sense of satisfaction. OK, let's assume you have a garden. Chances are it's small. Most gardens in cities are hardly big enough for a few pots of herbs and a couple of rows of beans. Now that's where allotments come in. A typical plot is around 250 square metres. Big enough to feed the family for a year. Big enough, too, to grow a whole range of vegetables, fruit as well, perhaps, not just cabbages and potatoes. Moving on to the social aspects of an allotment. How many people can say their garden is a meeting place? You might chat with your next-door neighbour every now and again, but allotments are notorious communal hives. There are usually between 10 and 30 plots on any allotment site, and they bring together people from all sorts of social backgrounds. Where else do you find a lawyer deep in conversation with a lorry driver? There's often a great sense of camaraderie, with initiatives to involve the wider community, including the less able, the retired, and the unemployed. In urban areas nowadays, people may have a tiny yard or a balcony, but it's not a garden. An allotment is a huge recreational asset for anyone in that situation. First of all, there's the exercise. Renting an allotment costs around £30 a month. That's generally a lot cheaper than joining a gym. Then there's the involvement with nature. Watching seeds grow into mature plants gives so much pleasure and such a sense of achievement. Spending time outside in the fresh air boosts our mental as well as physical well-being. And one more thing. Don't forget allotments are also an enormous benefit to the environment. They provide invaluable green space in our ever more clogged-up towns and cities, making them more sustainable and appealing to live in. These spaces provide a habitat for wild plants, birds, insects, and occasionally bigger animals. What's more, locally grown food doesn't have to be transported long distances, and that helps to reduce road traffic and hence pollution. Now, food. A subject we all like talking about, because the main appeal of an allotment is obviously taking home all the freshly picked vegetables and fruit. So why is Grow Your Own so good? Well, to start with, there's the superior flavour. Food you've grown yourself tastes infinitely better than anything bought in the supermarket because it will be super fresh. Another point in its favour is the range. These days, gardeners are growing an amazing variety of vegetables on their allotments. Finally, there's the bonus of knowing that the produce you've grown is organic. You know that what you're eating wasn't grown on an industrial-scale farm or sprayed with large amounts of pesticides.
Now you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen to the next part of the talk and answer questions 18 to 20.
Now I'm going to show you a typical allotment from the site closest to here on Finley Road. Let me just get this image up. That's it. Can everyone see? So, as you can see here, each plot has a fence around it and its own gate. Between the beds are grass walkways. That means you can walk in and around comfortably and not get your boots too muddy. There are soil beds on either side. This plot, in fact, has two smaller flower beds opposite a much larger area for vegetables. And there's also a glass house for growing tomatoes or anything that needs more warmth and protection. Here you can see one of those at the front near the gate. Most allotments have their own shed at the far end, as you can see. Allotments do need a water source, though, and there are stone sinks outside the sheds. A hose pipe can be attached to the tap for easy watering. Some of the plots have a pond, though they're not always popular as they tend to attract insects. And this plot has a compost bin at the end opposite the shed for recycling organic waste. Right. So, how to go about getting an allotment?
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You will hear a conversation between Thomas and Nadia, who are waiting at the airport.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Where have you been, Nadia?
Browsing in the bookshop.
What took you so long? You said you were only going to be away 5 minutes.
I was only gone for a quarter of an hour.
Well, it seemed much longer than that. Did you buy anything?
I was tempted to get the latest novel by Dan Brown, but it's quite heavy and I'd have to carry it around with me. If I could have found a crossword puzzle book, I'd have bought it. But in the end, I was attracted to a front-page article in today's issue of the New York Times.
Is that all you bought then?
Yes. Look, why don't you read the business section while I catch up on the news, and then we can swap?
I'd rather have the entertainment section.
Are you looking for anything in particular?
I just thought they might have a review in there of that new play that opened on Broadway yesterday.
The drama about the awfully cruel pirate?
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. I wonder how good it is. Actually, I was thinking of the new comedy, the one about the physician.
Dr. Hunter.
That's the one.
Well, when I was in the bookshop, I overheard a couple talking about it, and they said it was fantastic. Not in the least bit boring. They especially liked the actor who played the main part. Very smooth, apparently.
Lots of fun, then.
Well, according to those two, they thought it was hilarious.
Ooh, we'll have to make a point of seeing it when we get back.
Definitely.
We didn't have time for breakfast and I'm hungry. Do you fancy a coffee and a muffin?
Sounds like a good idea.
And how will you have your coffee today? Long and black as usual?
I think I might have something different this morning.
What? You don't mean a flat white or some other milky one?
Oh, I don't know. I want something to perk me up.
An espresso, short and black with sugar?
Perfect.
Will that be with a chocolate muffin or a berry muffin?
I'll try to stay off chocolate. The berry sounds healthier.
And I'll have a plain one with butter. Won't be long.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So, how...
Here you are. Mind the coffee. It's really hot.
Thank you. I'm really ready for this.
Have you thought about what we should see when we get to London?
The Tower, of course. I've always wanted to get a look at the crown jewels. That is where they keep the jewels, isn't it?
I think so. And what about the wheel? I hear it's quite extraordinary.
I'm not that keen on the wheel. Do you want to ride on it?
No way.
Well, let's leave it out of the itinerary then.
OK, so do we do the tower first?
Yes, that's the idea. And then we absolutely have to go to Westminster.
Really?
Yes. Look, it's not going to cost us anything. And I promised my sister I'd take photos there.
Well, if you insist.
I do. Oh, did you know the British Museum is free to the public? Not just residents, but tourists as well.
Well, I did know that, but I was hoping we wouldn't have to spend time in any museums. We've only got 3 days in all, and it'll take at least 1 whole day to go through the museum.
Well, let's say we leave it till day 3 and see how you feel then.
OK, I can't argue with that.
And Buckingham Palace?
I suppose you've promised lots of photos of that as well, have you?
Well, no, not really. But we can't say we've been to London and haven't seen the Queen's Palace.
I guess not. And there's the added benefit that it won't cost anything as well.
Oh, Thomas, it's not that I'm afraid of spending money. It's just that I want to see all the traditional sites first.
Good. I'm glad that's sorted. Listen, I think they just called our flight.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. you will hear an introduction about an eco-friendly building called the Gherkin. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, I'd like to tell you about how UK architects are playing their part to address the issue of global warming. You have seen many of these iconic buildings while going about your everyday life, but you may not know how they are affecting your tomorrow. In 2003, construction was completed on the famous Swiss rebuilding, or more informally called the Gherkin, a true masterpiece commissioned by the law offices of Foster and Partners. This is not the first ambitious endeavour of the firm. They are renowned for their various philanthropic environmental efforts. The Gherkin, with its cut-and-edge green initiative and sharp design, is gaining recognition as an icon in modern architecture. You can pick it out of the London skyline by its unorthodox cigar shape. While its appearance is the obvious attribute at which to marvel, there is far more to this building than meets the eye. And let's face it, there's a lot about this building that meets the eye. The building helps reduce the city's carbon footprint in a number of ways. Just a quick note, in case you're not familiar with the term carbon footprint, get used to it. It's a buzzword you'll hear relentlessly to talk about reducing emissions. Think of it as the amount of harmful greenhouse gases that are given off into the environment by a single person, organization, or product. So going back to the Gherkin building, perhaps the most obvious as well as the most significant eco-friendly feature is the glass windows, which allow light to pass through the building, both reducing heating costs and brightening up the workspace. The ingenuity behind the various eco-friendly aspects of the Gherkin has seen its fair share of publicity both from serious and silly sources. In a recent April Fool's Day edition, One e-publication printed a story detailing plans to replace 50% of the current exterior with grass, which would not only make large steps in the name of sustainability, but also give the building the green hue that would truly earn it the nickname of the Gherkin. The only drawback is, as you may have guessed, that this story was an April Fool's Day joke and completely made up. In all seriousness though, the building is setting a new standard of design that other architects and city planners just cannot ignore. The building's bold and cost-efficient design has won a number of architecture awards, including the Stirling Prize, the London Region Award, and the Empress Skyscraper Award, among others. The design comfortably accommodates a large number of offices, while keeping maintenance and operation costs down, striking a superb balance between nature and the workplace. Nature is well and good, as long as the weather is nice outside. Given London's notoriously bad weather, the architects knew they must devise a quality temperature regulation system, and that they did. A special system designed to reduce the building's reliance on air conditioning was devised that cuts consumption in half compared to standard office buildings. There are atria that link each floor vertically to one another, forming spiraling spaces up the entire building. They serve not just as social common spaces, but also act as the building's lungs, distributing clean air from the opening panels in the facade through the entire building. The building isn't all business though. It has its fair share of fun as well. At the very top, a club room offers a picturesque entertainment spot for company functions, private parties, etc., with a breathtaking panoramic view of the city. The creation of such an innovative structure has many wondering what the future of urban planning and architecture may be. Well, if the other projects currently commissioned by Foster and Partners are any indication, the entire city constructed with similarly eco-friendly buildings is not far in the distance. The Masdar City development aims to create a desert city that produces zero waste and removes as much carbon dioxide from the atmosphere as it puts in, a huge feat in protecting our Earth. The Gherkin is a truly impressive feat, yet it is not the only one worth noting. Now to move on to another green initiative, I'll tell you about the Eden Foundation building found in Cornwall.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.